Welcome to another episode of Clean Truths, where we explore the journeys and insights of those making a meaningful impact in the world of health, wellness, and science. You guys, I'm so excited because today I am completely honored to have with us Dr. Aimee, widely known, and a lot of you may know her as the Eggwhisperer. As a renowned fertility specialist, Dr. Aimee has dedicated her career to helping individuals and couples navigate the complex world of fertility. With her compassionate approach and groundbreaking work, she's become a trusted voice and advocate for those looking to grow their families. In this episode, we'll dive into the latest advancements in fertility treatments, discuss the emotional and physical challenges faced by many on this journey, and gain valuable advice from one of the leading experts in the field. So whether you're considering your own path to parenthood, you have been recently diagnosed with cancer and want to know what your options are before you start chemotherapy, or simply curious about the science behind it, stay tuned as we uncover the truths with Dr. Aimee, the Eggwhisperer. And you guys, she is so funny. She walked into my house right before we recorded, and I just instantly fell in love with her. She is darling, she is smart, she is quick-witted, and I see why every single person falls in love with her and why you would want her as your doctor. The fact that she spent her time with me, I'm completely blown away. I love her so much, and you are going to fall in love with her during this episode as well. So thanks so much for tuning in. Enjoy. Okay, my question for you.
Yeah.
So we're just going to jump in.
Yeah.
Are we, and when I say we, I truly mean the human population, let alone the U.S., let alone San Francisco, globally, are we being poisoned?
We are being poisoned from the minute we are conceived as an embryo.
Mm-hmm.
Our egg cells are being let me just start over.
Mm-hmm.
Our egg cells, let's say right now I were to ovulate, this egg has been exposed to 48 years plus 9 months of plastics. So literally, we are being poisoned. Same with sperm cells. I mean, look at the decline in the sperm count that we're seeing generation after generation. Scientists predict that maybe in the next 20 years, men won't be ejaculating enough sperm to conceive a pregnancy naturally. So IVF will be the only way that the human population can continue on. So I'm really concerned about that. We're seeing higher rates of endometriosis, PCOS, infertility. I could go on and on. So, I mean, I can't say it enough that we have to pay really careful and close attention to our exposures, not just in pregnancy, but also pre-pregnancy as well.
So last week, I had the honor of interviewing, and I should actually introduce you guys. Her name is Valentina Milanova.
Okay.
She's the founder of a company called Day, and she's the first ever to create a hemp tampon with CBD. And she created this because, as we know, tampons are full of toxins, arsenic, plastic, and now it's really come out that they're terrible for you, right?
Right.
And I'm now just thinking, because she and I were talking about inflammation, cancer, all this stuff creates. Are you seeing a link of tampons and infertility?
No, I don't think so. I think if you actually look at the study that was just recently published, I think it was more of a clickbait article to cause fear that is really unnecessary.
Okay.
So I don't think the exposure is as scary as
they make it out to be.
Yeah, when I first saw the article, I was like, oh my goodness. And then when I actually read it, I was like, oh, this is not as bad as it seems. So I don't necessarily think that, because these things are expensive. Switching out your tampons is really expensive. But I think menstrual cups could be a nice alternative, and then your friend's company too.
Mm-hmm. We're seeing, especially actually here in the Bay Area, we're seeing younger and younger girls hit puberty. And they're now saying the average age is around 8 years old. I'm curious if we're seeing a younger generation hit puberty of young girls, which is crazy to me because at 8 years old, I was still playing with Barbies.
Right.
I was ripping off their heads. I can't believe that 8-year-olds are now starting to get their periods.
Yeah.
What does this mean in terms of fertility and egg preservation? And what are these 8-year-old girls and their moms and their parents? How do they stay informed? This is a crazy thing that's happening.
Right. Well, first of all, we don't talk enough about puberty, just like we don't talk enough about menopause.
Right. Yes.
Right? It's like this mysterious thing that happens to you where you start getting hair under your armpits and you start making, your breasts start, forming, and all of a sudden you get a period and no one prepares you for that. But the good news is that your age at puberty doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to run out of eggs earlier in your life. But it would seem common sense that if your period's starting sooner, then you're going to run out of eggs. So
that's exactly what I was thinking.
So that doesn't happen. But the girls who are experiencing puberty earlier, it could be due to their body size and also plastic exposure. So they may have problems in the future, but I think, we're going to get to a point where at least 50% of women by the time they're 25 will be freezing their eggs, just because of what's happening with fertility and how our fertility is being threatened by the environment.
When you say plastic exposure, I'm starting to realize that means something different for different people. So for some people that means microplastics in the water. Some people that means, my makeup's in a plastic container. Like when you are describing plastics, what are you addressing?
It's everything. It's in the water, it's in the diapers, it's in the bottles.
It's in the diapers. Yes.
Absolutely. Look at the diapers that we're putting on our children, and we're changing them all day long so that they're exposed to plastics from the minute they're born. Not only that, but when a woman is pregnant, she's also exposed to plastics as well, and that gets passed to the baby too. So they've done studies. They've measured BPA levels in babies in the NICU. Babies should not have BPA in their blood or their urine, and they do.
Yeah. Especially with the BPA water bottles. And I know, and just from marketing, and I'm not even pregnant, but just seeing what these pregnant moms are marketed, it's every product, these baby products, they're not clean. They're full of plastics. And for that to just compound.
Yeah. So I'm a medical advisor for Million Markers.
Million Markers,
yeah,
okay.
So Jenna Hua is the founder. So she's a PhD from Stanford, and she has a kit that can actually measure your BPA levels in your urine. And she'll have you do a diary, a product diary, and then she'll help you change out products and then measure your BPA levels again. And she also has approved products on her website as well. She'd be a good interview for you.
That's amazing.
Yeah, she would.
Oh my gosh, that's so cool. Yeah. Okay, good to know. Yeah. My other question is, when these younger girls, and you have kids.
I do.
You have 4 children.
Yes.
Your daughters.
Yeah, 2 and
around
2.
the same age.
Yeah.
If we're seeing these young girls hit puberty at 8 years old, what does this now mean for schools to address sexual activity? Right? Are we going to see an increased number of kids being sexually active? I'm so curious of how that's going, and that those conversations are going to happen.
Well, I tell my daughters that they're allergic to penises. Well, you can imagine what I do for work. My girls knew about sex very early on.
It was their first word.
Penis was their first
Penis.
word. And I said allergy, rash, hives. So as far as, not my 8-year-old, because I can tell the stages of puberty, right? It's
totally.
I can tell when there's things that happen before you start your period, like armpit hair and breast buds and pubic hair. So you just have to look out for those things. But kids are also more sexually active at a younger age now than they were before. So we have to have those conversations at a younger age.
And those conversations also lead to birth control.
Yes.
Now, the Chemo Club knows my thoughts on birth control.
Okay, let's see if my thoughts are
And I also noticed this light's on. I'm really sorry.
Oh, no, that's okay.
Let me just turn this on, even though we are pretty lit up.
Yeah.
We just need an extra. There we go.
Okay.
I have my own thoughts on birth control. And I'm just curious, what are your overall thoughts on birth control? Let me start with that.
My overall thoughts on birth control is that I'm concerned when young girls take it, it affects their mood and it can cause depression and anxiety, and people don't address that enough. And so we're seeing higher rates of depression and anxiety in younger people. And I just worry that sometimes we don't address the underlying issue as to why we're putting girls on birth control, and we're just using it as a Band-Aid. So if someone has severe mood swings, birth control might actually cause them to be worse. And then people say things like, oh, the birth control pill isn't causing it. Yes. Or birth control isn't causing your weight gain. So there are a number of non-contraceptive benefits to birth control. There's no doubt about it. No doubt about it. Regulates your periods, keeps you going to school. For example, when you have severe pain with your periods, can help clear up your skin. If you have PCOS, it can be a tool in your toolbox. But there are other ways of balancing your hormones other than using birth control.
Which would be what?
Well, if, for example, you have PCOS, you can look at lifestyle factors, the foods you eat, your activity levels, and try and address it that way before choosing birth control.
Do you believe or do you agree with the narrative that birth control can be linked to infertility?
Birth control in no way is linked to infertility.
Okay.
If anything, it can save women from infertility because it's a treatment for fibroids, it's a treatment for endometriosis, adenomyosis, so it can actually prevent infertility in those patients. So I tell my patients, because they often want to blame something, it must be the birth control. And I say, stop shaming yourself. It's not the birth control that caused you to have the endometriosis that you have today. Actually, the birth control made it so that your endometriosis is not as bad as it could have been had you not been on birth control pills for the last 10 years. However, because you were on birth control, you didn't have the pain. So you weren't doing the monitoring. You weren't doing the scan. So birth control can actually mask a lot of issues that women have while they're on it, and they don't realize they're having issues until they stop it. So I'm a huge fan of getting a pelvic ultrasound, every couple of years, just to make sure that there's nothing that you're missing. Like endometriosis, for example, I think we have to be a lot more proactive with our health nowadays, just because of our environmental exposures.
No, totally. And I think, especially when it comes to the Chemo Club, like one thing we preach is you have to be your own advocate in every area of your life, right? Not only your general health, but you need to start asking questions and be proactive about asking your OBGYN or your primary doctor about fertility and if you're interested in family planning, because I feel like those conversations don't come to you. You have to be very persistent about that and be very proactive. And I feel like there are very limited resources when you go to a normal hospital. You're not given any information. So what's the best conversation for somebody who's in their early 30s, late 20s, that are interested in family planning, but their doctors never brought up to them? How do you initiate that conversation?
Well, I think, unfortunately, there are some OBGYNs, especially OBGYNs who've had their own fertility journeys themselves that can be helpful, but those conversations are best had with a fertility expert. And I'm obviously biased. I think
as you should be.
I think, just like if you were planning a safari, you would go to the travel clinic and see, what do I need to do to be prepared for this great trip that I've been thinking about for the last 5 years. And they'll arm you with the supplements that you need to take, the vaccines that you need, then you go off on your safari. Or if you were going to go on a cross-country road trip, why don't you take your car to the mechanic, have them check under the hood before you venture off on your journey? Well, I think everyone who's planning a pregnancy should see someone like me, so we can do things like an ultrasound, blood work, look at your medication list, make sure that they're pregnancy safe, talk to you about supplementation. If you're partnered, look at, sperm quality, do genetic screening ahead of time. And so that's how I came up with the Tushy method, because I feel like it shouldn't be as complicated and difficult to get your fertility checked.
Right.
So it's an easy mnemonic for looking at your tubes, your uterus, sperm, hormones, and your genetics. And that's it.
Say it again. So the Tushy method is tubes,
uterus, sperm, hormones, and your genetics.
Okay.
So if you look at all of those things, and you can go into your fertility planning very well informed. So I consider myself a fertility fortune teller. So I can take, your levels, your age, what's going on with your body, and kind of predict what the future will look like for you. But like a fortune teller, sometimes I suck. And what I mean by that is you never really know what's going to happen until someone actually tries to get pregnant.
Okay.
Sometimes you learn things along the way that surprise you, because we can't tell the quality of a woman's eggs until she either gets pregnant or goes through IVF and we actually can see the quality of the embryos. That's what makes it a little bit more difficult. Like a guy can put his sperm in a cup and we can look at it under a microscope. But for us as women, we have hormone tests that kind of act like a semen analysis for a woman, but they're not that good.
I want to address, I feel like it's a very common narrative you hear women say to other women. They go, but freezing your eggs is an insurance policy, right? And freezing your eggs, let me break this down actually. Let me take a step back. The first step in IVF, does it have to be freezing your eggs or no? Is freezing eggs part of IVF? Is that your first step?
So IVF and egg freezing are the exact same thing, except when you do IVF, you're effing the eggs. So you're fertilizing them. I don't know what you were thinking. I don't know what F word you were thinking of. but you're effing the eggs. So egg freezing is great for, younger women who want assurance. That they're going to have a chance for pregnancy in the future. It's unfortunately not insurance because there are no guarantees. IVF is creating embryos. Mm-hmm. So that's when you have a partner or a sperm donor and you want to create embryos for the future.
And when you say when you're looking for the quality of an egg, what does quality mean? Like, what does that word mean for?
Genetic viability.
Viability,
yeah,
okay.
So genetic viability of an egg has a lot to do with a woman's age. So for example, a 25-year-old egg probably has a 90% chance of being genetically normal.
Okay.
A 45-year-old egg has a 1% chance of being genetically viable.
That's so crazy.
Yeah, and more people now are starting their families at 45, even 50. So I predict that your children are not going to have kids until they're 45.
Really?
Uh-huh.
What about your kids?
So
do you think that age is...
So I joke with my 16-year-old son, and I tell him how much, this is how we do sex ed at my house. I tell him how much I want to be a grandma. By the time I'm 50, that's in 2 years. He's like, that is so gross. Stop it.
Please tell me, DSL brings you in as the sex ed teacher. They 1,000% should.
Yeah, all his friends and their moms, they always love when their boys come to my house because we talk about that kind of stuff.
You're so cute.
Yeah.
Well, and that's the first thing. And this is what I've learned. You have to break shame around taboo topics.
Yeah.
Right? And it's so...
Totally.
But I didn't realize how many topics there are shame and taboo around it.
Yeah.
Even in the cancer community, it's crazy.
Yeah.
People do not discuss certain things because there's shame around it. Why is there shame around chemotherapy? There should not be. Why is there shame around anus cancer? There shouldn't be.
There shouldn't be.
And you have to start having conversations, and that's what I love that you do. But you're funny as hell. Like, you're fucking hilarious. You make this approachable, and I feel like someone like me who is not well-versed, I don't really know the terms or the right lingo for it. Right. You have such a beautiful bedside manner that I'm like, I want to just share all my deep secrets with you. And I feel like you need sort of that type of personality to do this every day.
Yeah.
Like, how many patients do you see? Like, how does it work?
Yeah, I mean, I probably reach... just personally me talking to a patient over 9,000 people a year.
Oh my God.
Yeah. And I always, because people are like, you must be so busy. And I don't like that word. I say my schedule is full, but not too full for you. So I always have capacity for anyone who needs my help.
That's so sweet.
Yeah. And you should come to one of our dinner time come over for dinner one night, because it's not unusual that my son will ask the question like, Mommy, what's a blowjob?
That is like a dream of mine, is to sit there.
That happened last week. So my 12-year-old asked at dinner, what's a blowjob?
Stop, are you serious?
Swear to God. And then my 16-year-old said, it's when you put your mouth to a woman's butthole and you blow.
Stop.
And then I told him what it really was. And he's like, oh, yeah, I knew that. And I was like, okay, good.
Was your husband just like...
No, he's always like, that's a question for Mommy.
That is so funny.
Yeah.
So there's no shame at your dinner table?
No shame at all. We talk about everything.
How do you, as a mom, make sure that your kids are safe, though? Like, how do you make sure that, nothing nefarious... Listen, I've been to a Danville high school. I know what happens. How are you making sure that nothing nefarious is happening?
Well, for the boys, I make sure they understand what consent means.
I love that.
And to always... if anything's going to happen, you always make sure that you have consent. And then for the girls, again, they're allergic to penises. But I tell them that, as far as touching, because they're way too young, about, always telling us things. And for me, it's also social media and monitoring their social media accounts and making sure that they're not being messaged. My daughter, one night, her phone was in my room and it was being blown up with these notifications. And she was getting texts from someone on one of these games that she plays.
Oh.
Yeah, how old are you? Where do you live? And what do you look like? And so, monitoring stuff like that is also another really important way of keeping
That's terrifying.
Safe. Yeah.
I didn't even know you could message on that on games, kids games.
Oh, totally. Mm-hmm.
That's insane.
Yeah.
What are you seeing? Do you feel like the conversation around the fertility, what is it?
Yeah.
What am I trying to say? Oh, the fertility gender gap.
Yeah.
So even a question, I don't even know what I'm asking.
It is.
It's okay, I guess it's more in terms of, I see so much shame and embarrassment for women around trying to get pregnant when, I'm sorry, your husband or male or whatever it's just as important for him to have viable living sperm.
Yeah.
Right?
So I get this a lot where a guy will say, well, I got someone pregnant when I was 18.
No. Does the wife know?
Oh, yeah. They've had those conversations, and he brags about it because his point is that it can't be me. And I just gently say, previous paternity is not a sign of current fertility. So no matter how many women you knocked up in your teenage years or your early 20s, that has nothing to do with how things are today. So testing is really easy for guys. I mean, they can do it from home with a simple test.
Yeah. Do you watch any Bravo shows? Do you watch like Housewives or anything like that?
I watch Emily in Paris.
Oh, me too. It's so good.
I just finished season 4.
I'm almost there too. It's so good.
Yeah.
Okay, there was a show. It's called Bling Empire on Bravo. Okay. And it followed all the rich, really rich Beverly Hills, the Asian community. One of my favorite shows. And one of the main characters, her name was Christine Shu, and she had a 1-year-old, and he was turning 2, and they were trying to get pregnant again. And they couldn't get pregnant, and how much shame there was for her, and a lot of the pressure from her husband's family, especially the moms, because she couldn't get pregnant.
So she should have said, your son's penis is too small to fit in my vagina, is what she should have said. And then that would shut down those conversations.
The crazy thing is that, so all the shame, they were blaming her. She finally goes and she sees the doctor, and they're like, you're totally fine. Mm-hmm. It's your husband. But yet, in some cultures, she's like, it's so sad because the only way that his family will know this is by watching this show. Yeah. So here she was under all this stress. It was like heartbreaking to see.
Yeah.
And it's just like, do you deal with that? Like, do you see situations like that?
All the time. And I just say very gently, because I don't want anyone to feel shame or feel like they're being blamed. Mm-hmm. I just very gently say there's just a fertilization issue, and let's talk about what we can do to make the sperm better. Because there are things that guys can do. Supplements, lifestyle changes, keeping their balls cool.
What are your thoughts on saunas? Like red light therapy saunas, which are huge right now.
Red light therapy, yes. So I recommend it to both women and men. Mm-hmm. Just don't wrap your red light around your balls, because that's not good. Don't tan your testicles. Very bad. And then as far as saunas, no. For women, yes. For men, no. Just because they heat. Yeah, because heat exposure, sperm doesn't like to be hot. That's why men carry their testicles in a sack outside their bodies. Yeah.
Okay, so because there is a big push right now you do red light therapy sauna, and you go into your cold plunge, and you go back and forth.
Yes. Yeah, so the red light therapy, the cold plunge, no problem. Just take the sauna. So my patients do red light. It's a medical grade pad that they put on their body. So It's not the sauna version, but red light saunas for women are safe.
Can you buy that outside of, do you have to see a doctor for that, or can you buy online?
You can buy online.
Okay, we'll just send me the links. I
will.
Love to see that. I will. We are seeing a huge increase in cancer diagnosis, truly in between the ages of 16, like starting at 16 right now, to like 42. Like, it is an insane increase with millennials and Gen Z. Mm-hmm. And I get messages all the time, and it's heartbreaking, especially from my breast cancer chemo club members saying, I was diagnosed at stage 4, and I was not given the option to freeze my eggs. Mm-hmm. My doctor never gave me that option. And when you look into it, it's just now starting, I feel like, in the cancer community to talk about egg freezing. Like, it's now starting to be one of the forefronts of conversations. What do you say to someone who is recently diagnosed? For example, I say, take a step back. You are allowed, as a human, you're human. One of your rights is you get 24 hours to take a deep breath and to digest everything that's just been burdened on you. And you need to get a second and third opinion. And I feel like what needs to happen, what the norm should be, is that a fertility doctor should be your next way of conversation.
Absolutely. So there are 2 emergencies in my practice. So there's sperm emergency is another one when a guy can't get it up. So actually 3 emergencies. But the 2 biggest emergencies that I deal with are a recent cancer diagnosis and an ectopic pregnancy. Oh. So if a patient calls into my practice and says, I've recently been diagnosed with cancer, I drop everything. I'm going to see them that night or the next day. And then I talk to their oncologist, and we make a plan to start their egg freezing or IVF cycle right away. And it's very important. it's actually malpractice if a cancer doctor does not offer fertility preservation to their cancer patient. So I feel like in the Bay Area, the oncologists do a really good job.
Totally.
But I imagine patients in other, cities where they might not have fertility doctors, it might be more difficult for those patients to have access to doctors like me. But it doesn't mean the patient can't see a doctor like me. I can see patients from all over the country. Mm-hmm. So a patient can reach out should they have a recent cancer diagnosis for help.
I did a poll, and it was, so I was like, I got so many of these messages, and I was like so overwhelmed. I was like, this is like heartbreaking. So I did a poll on Instagram, and I was like, were you given the option? Were you told or to have any sort of discussion with your doctor about your fertility treatments? Every person who said no was in the Midwest.
Yeah.
And I thought that was so interesting.
Yeah.
Because I can do a virtual conversation with you or with a fertility doctor, correct?
Yes, absolutely.
And then let's just say if they can't find a good doctor in their area, what do you recommend?
If they can't find a good doctor in their area, they should travel. So I can have an out-of-town patient monitored. Mm-hmm. They can start medications right away, and they can just fly in for their egg retrieval and fly home.
So it's easy.
Relatively, yes. For someone who's highly motivated, yeah.
Totally.
Yeah.
When it comes to mental health around this whole process, and what you said earlier is so interesting to me because I feel like the common thing to do, the normal thing right now is we put young girls on birth control, mm-hmm. which you can have serious side effects of depression, suicidal thoughts, like that's common. You go from that to then, let's just say you're trying to get pregnant. That in itself, I don't care what anybody says, is mentally taxing, right? Let's just say you're struggling, so then you have to go and do egg freezing, which you have to take certain medications, right? Which also plays a big, emotional roller coaster to IVF. That's years, right, of emotional turmoil, and that can play a big part on your mental health.
Yep.
What do you put in place? How do you ensure that mental health is like a number one thing that you guys watch over? What should someone do when it comes to that? Because it's so hard to like even think about.
It is. So the one question I get a lot is, how is IVF going to affect my health? So that's one of the most commonly asked questions. And I say, it's not going to give you cancer. It's not going to cause your baby to have autism, but it could cause you to have depression, anxiety, and PTSD. So I actually came up, you already heard my Tushy method, I came up with my fertility team. Okay. So I tell patients to build their team ahead of time, and each letter stands for something. Therapy, exercise, acupuncture, meditation, and mindfulness. Nutrition is obviously part of that too. So the E should also be exercise and eating habits. So I ask them to talk to a nutritionist, find a great acupuncturist, use a meditation app, strength train, continue to walk. I think there's this myth that once you're ready to start trying, you have to stop exercising. And that's like the worst thing that you can do to somebody who's used to being active.
Oh, wow.
So I tell patients to prepare for pregnancy as if you're training for a marathon. You want to be in the best shape of your life.
Okay.
This isn't the time for you to, let go. And,
it goes downhill. Yeah. We can cut this out. We don't have to talk about this.
Yeah,
but I'm curious.
Yeah.
You're Catholic?
Absolutely. Yeah, unfortunately. I was in Catholic magazine and they called me the devil. So if you look at my name and Catholic, you're actually going to see they called me the devil. But I think being Catholic, it really depends on what community you live in. Because in our community, we have a very progressive Catholic community where we understand that there are certain things that the Pope may say, but we take that with a grain of salt.
Christian, same vein.
Yeah.
I'm very curious as to how many people come to you and say, you're messing with God's plans.
So I say to them, if you had a kidney disorder, would you be saying that? If your kidney stopped working, would you say that? Wouldn't you still get treatment? Fertility should be just like every other disease. And I explain to them that I'm doing God's work each and every day. He humbles me with lots of experiences because not everything I do works. So I also don't believe in God. Just kidding.
And I hate the Pope.
I think he's the devil. No, I have great respect for the church, and I love the school community that we're in, but I also feel like God put me here for a reason, and that's to help as many people as I can become loving parents.
I'm gonna cry. You're so sweet. The other big takeaway I have, like my biggest learning lesson that I think seen over the past 3.5, 4 years, life is not black and white. It really isn't. There is a lot of gray. And I feel like sometimes it comes down to religion. Religion wants everything black and white. And like that's just not life. Yeah. It's really not.
I had a pastor it was a dinner function. He came up to me and all of a sudden he started talking about gays and how
great. What a great dinner
I was like, are you seriously having this conversation with me right now about how gays shouldn't be having kids because God didn't intend them to have kids? And I was like, well, God created me and I help them have kids. Mm-hmm. So, and then there might have been a little bit of a fight. I did win though. But, my point is that, yeah, people have very strong religious beliefs that they insert into, especially with no experiences with mm-hmm. other communities, and they feel like they can make rules for other people that they should just mind their own business and live and let live.
Amen, sister. Someone who's had an abortion, mm-hmm. will that affect what their fertility is later on in life?
Absolutely not. And I think there's a lot of shame around that.
There's so much shame around that.
And I tell patients, look, you made a decision that was right for you at that time. Mm-hmm. Move on. Look forward. Don't look back.
Don't look back.
Don't look back.
Yeah.
And, every woman has the right to choose when it's right for her to have a baby. Mm-hmm. I wish it was as easy as like, now I want a baby and I'll have one. But your previous decision and procedure or medications you took to end a pregnancy is not the reason why you're having trouble getting pregnant right now.
On Instagram, I put up a little question box. I want people send what fertility questions do you have? Mm-hmm. I know it's going to be a video. Let me just count this for you. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. I have 12 just on this subject. I had over 40 submissions. 12, truly all of them said, all different ones. How does abortion affect future pregnancies? So there is so much shame around that. And I think people don't talk about it. When you search for it in podcasts, be like, does anyone else talk about it? They don't. So this will be the first one where you and I say, actually discuss this.
Yeah. Yeah, there's nothing wrong with having an abortion. Your mm-hmm. abortion did not cause your infertility. Mm-hmm. And it's not God punishing you. I promise you.
That's so good.
Yeah.
NAD.
NAD is amazing.
Why?
Because our NAD levels go down around the age of 30. And that's around the same age that the chromosomal abnormalities in our embryos go up. Mm-hmm. So I predict that women who start NAD, even in their late 20s, might actually have an easier time getting pregnant when they're ready. They may have a lower chance of having miscarriage, and we might actually see that. I've been on it personally for 7 years now.
Oh, wow.
I take True Niagen's NAD+.
Okay.
I take 1,000 milligrams a day, and that's why I don't have a gray hair.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't get Botox, as you can tell, but I should. But
I'm literally in your early 30s. Oh my God, you're so you're taking it in pill form.
Yeah, I've been taking it in pill form, and it's because I had a patient
mm-hmm.
who was over 40, and long story short, she did IVF with me and had an amazing cycle, and she had done several cycles before, and none of them went well. Okay. And I was like, what did you do? She's like, I did research. There was some study in rats that showed that rats that didn't have NAD, and then they replenished the NAD, then they had much better fertility rates. So I said, I'm going to research which company has the best NAD. And so she found this company, and then she showed it to me, and I was like, everyone's going to be on it now.
Yep. I learned about NAD maybe 6 years ago because of Hailey Bieber. And she did an interview, and she's like, I'm going to live and I'm not going to age because I take NAD. And I do the intravenous NAD, which I love, but it hurts when you do it. So I tell everyone, it hurts, but this is such a funny story. One of my best girlfriends, she just moved, but she used to live right here, and she and I were kind of doing keeping each other accountable with our health and wellness. Mm-hmm. And I introduced her, I'm like, let's do NAD together. I'm not joking you. She met my naturopath, put her on some supplements, we're doing NAD, boom, pregnant.
Yeah, I have a lot of NAD stories.
Boom, pregnant, crazy. Mm-hmm. And she says to me, she's like, I'm telling you, she's like, it's because I just started taking supplements and I did those 3 rounds of NAD. It's powerful.
It is. It really is.
What other supplements are like some of your favorites?
Yeah, so CoQ10, and it's my favorite when a patient calls it CoQ10. And I'm like, shh, it's CoQ10.
CoQ10?
Yeah, I literally had a patient once, true story. I asked her if I could share this for the rest of my life. She said yes. She said she went to the pharmacy and asked the pharmacy where the cock is.
Stop.
And they're like, cock? And she didn't know that it's CoQ10.
CoQ10.
So funny. Yeah, so CoQ10.
And what does it do? What does CoQ10 do?
Same thing. It helps support the mitochondrial health of your eggs. So same idea behind NAD.
Okay.
And then a good prenatal that has a good amount of vitamin D and fish oil. Mm-hmm. And then for patients who are patients who are concerned about their egg quality, I have them add resveratrol. And then for patients who might have PCOS, ovasitol. So that's kind of my go-to supplement line or supplement list that I recommend to patients. There's so many things that people find online that they can take.
Yeah.
And I ask patients to just like pare it down because you're also exposing yourself to plastics when you're taking these pills too. So that's why I'm concerned about patients who are taking like 20 supplements a day.
That's me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Jenna, who's the founder of Million Marker, she actually had high BPA levels and it was from her supplements, from her pills. So
it's so crazy.
Yeah.
So what are you supposed to do?
Take less.
Just take less?
Yeah, or powder or liquid form.
Okay. Yeah. Well, and the other thing that I just learned about, oh my God, this is so wild.
Yeah.
Do you know?
Yeah.
Do you know that the IV bags that contain...
totally. It's all plastic.
It's all plastic. Well, when you're doing your chemo treatments, do you know that those plastics cause your chemotherapy not to fully work?
Wow.
And then what is it doing? It's just putting all these forever...
Yeah.
So we're in a lawsuit right now, I guess. So BCPP, Breast Awareness Prevention Partners, CEO, she lives here in San Francisco, she's incredible. Her organization, they're suing Big Pharma, the largest manufacturer of all these medical bags, because they knew for like 30 years how toxic they were. Anyways, so right here in San Francisco, we're going up to war right now against this.
Wow. Yeah.
It's everywhere though. It's so hard. And that's the thing. It's also overwhelming. Mm-hmm. Truly, it is also overwhelming. Everything is so toxic. Everything is bad for you. Health, your beauty, your supplement. Like, you can't even have supplements without exposing yourself.
Right.
And so my advice is do everything in moderation.
Right. Less is more when it comes to supplements. Because food is still medicine. So you can still get a lot of what you need from what you eat.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So you agree. Everything in moderation and just bring it down to less.
Yeah.
What is the difference between IUI? What does it stand for?
Intrauterine insemination. It's a fancy turkey baster.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's like in all the movies, like that one JLo movie where they have to take the...
Totally.
That's so IUI and then IVF. So
Correct.
2 different things.
Yeah.
And does one help the other? Or like, is it interchangeable?
No, I mean, IUI pregnancy rates aren't as high as people think. Oh. So your chance with IUI, depending on your age, is usually not higher than 15%.
Okay.
But IVF, depending on your age, could be as high as 85%. So if someone is, let's say, starting their journey at 37 and they want 2 kids, they should really consider doing IVF because then they benefit from the fertility preservation aspect of it because you can freeze embryos for your future. With IUI, you can't do IVF when you're pregnant. You'll have to do it when you're 39. And at 39, for example, your eggs are not going to be as viable as when you were 37.
Interesting. Okay. So what age would you recommend someone to start freezing their eggs?
Whenever they're ready. But ultimately, if someone's like 25 to 28 and they're thinking about it, that's a great age to do it. If you're 32, I would say by the time you're 32 would be a good age.
Okay.
But I have all these like golden rules. My golden rules are, get your fertility levels checked, see a fertility doctor, talk about your future plans, how many kids you want, how old you want to be when you have your last child. You might not know that, But it's good to at least start talking about it. If there's a chance you might want kids, freeze your eggs. Mm-hmm. Doesn't mean you're going to have kids, but at least give yourself the opportunity so that when you're 50, coming to see me, ready for your first child, you can be your own egg donor. You can use the eggs from when you were 25, when you're 50, and have a healthy pregnancy, hopefully.
What about for someone who is recently diagnosed with cancer? Let's say you're 16, 17, and you stage 1, like something that's gonna, you'll be fine. Same sort of, still freeze your eggs, or you'll be fine. You can do it after your chemo.
Oh, no, definitely do it before chemo because of the gonatotoxicity of chemotherapy. So chemotherapy can put you into menopause at an earlier age.
Okay. What about for young men?
Same. They should freeze their sperm.
Okay, so freezing your sperm. Walk me through that. Is it the exact same thing as freezing your eggs?
It's really easy.
Okay.
It's a cup, your bedroom, and that's it. I mean, there are companies now that literally you can get a kit shipped to your home and then collect a sample and ship it out. And you can order a number of kits so you can have a lot of samples frozen. So you can literally ship your sperm from your house and have it frozen.
It's incredible.
Yeah.
Where do you see the IVF egg freezing transforming? Like, where's it going to go in the next 5 to 10 years?
More and more people are going to need it, is what I predict. Because as you probably know from what you hear in the news, more women over 35 are having children than under 35. And they're having kids at an age where, as you can imagine, they're going to have a harder time just because of the age of the egg. Mm-hmm. So more people are going to need IVF than ever before in 5 or 10 years from now.
Do you see it as a mom and like with your kid in school? Do you see older moms? Like, do you feel like that's really like it's actually the norm?
Oh, especially in the Bay Area.
Yes.
I mean, it's very. My average patient's around 41 years old.
Really?
Yeah. So it's for me. I tell my patients, you're not old. You know, if you're 41 and seeing me, you're feeling young and you look amazing and you're taking great care of yourself.
Yeah.
It's just the age of the egg. It's your advanced mitochondrial age, not advanced maternal age.
What's the hardest part of your job?
The hardest part is giving people bad news. Mm-hmm. So I used to take it out on myself a lot and do a lot of self-harm through eating poorly. And then I realized, well, this is not a way for me to live until I'm 90 to see my first grandchild when my daughter has a kid at 50. Because I had my youngest at 40. So I'm like thinking I need to live to be 90 to see a grandchild. And she actually says to me, Mommy, are you going to be alive still when I have a baby? And I'm like, I hope so.
Like, for the love of God,
I know.
Please.
But yeah, so I've been on my own health journey as well, just so that I can be here for them. And so that starts now with strength training, eating healthy, stretching, all those things.
How, like, truly, you are incredible. You see 9,000 patients a year.
Yeah.
You have 4 kids. Not only did you go to Harvard, you went to UCLA and University of Michigan. You have a thriving practice. You do your own podcast. You are so nice and give generous with your time with a loser like me. Like, how do you break out your day? As now, just speaking to the women and the moms of the chemo club, like, what does your day look like? You wake up and boom. Like, what time do you wake up? What do you do?
It depends on the day. I'm usually up by 6:30 at the very latest.
Okay.
And literally, like I said earlier, I have the most amazing husband.
Mm-hmm.
My bag is packed. My coffee is made. My
Stop.
protein bar is in my bag. He walks me to the car. I actually have a driver. I don't drive myself.
Good. Save yourself time.
Yeah, absolutely. I do my makeup literally in the car.
Yep.
And then I see patients all day. Either my husband or my driver will take me home. Mm-hmm. Dinner's ready. Kids are already at their activities. Homework's being done. They're being dropped off, picked up from tutoring or their sports. And I'm working up until probably around midnight answering emails. I send out about 400 to 500 emails a day. No joke.
How do you so like when do you is it the weekends? Like, when do you invest in yourself? Like, when are you stretching?
I actually have a yoga mat in my office. I have weights in my office. So I have 5 pound and 10 pound weights. So in between patients, I tell my staff, I'm like, ignore me. They know, they're totally used to me. So I'm just doing reps. I'm doing squats. I'm stretching on my yoga mat. And like, if I have 5 seconds, I do a lot of phone calls. So on my phone calls, I now know how to lift without grunting. So people don't know that I'm doing weights or squats, but that's how I built it in. Otherwise, it would never happen.
You are finding and making time.
Yeah. You have to.
That's what every person I've interviewed so far, that's what they say. They're like, I make time because it's important. I will.
Yeah. And I try and get at least 8,000 steps per day. So if I don't, my kids are like, oh, mommy hasn't reached 8,000. So I'll just run around the house.
So you run up the stairs sprinting. Okay. Cognizant of time. Got a couple minutes left. I had so many submissions for questions for you. But some important ones are just popping out right now. This one came up a lot. A lot of these are my friends. Yeah. Quite a few of them are on Ozempic. Uh-huh.
Big fan.
Really?
Huge fan.
Okay, but here's sort of the issue. Well, not the issue, but Allie, I've been on Ozempic now for a year and a half. I'm finally happy with my body. I lost 55 pounds. if I try to do pregnancy, or if I have to do IVF, will my weight gain be insane during my pregnancy?
Well, if it is, just remember you can go back on it when you deliver.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, I think a lot of women in the first trimester actually lose weight just because they have so many food aversions.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't be scared about that. I would just let yourself be.
Enjoy it.
Yeah, absolutely.
You did it once, you can do it again.
Absolutely.
And why do you like Ozempic?
I think it decreases the food noise that women or people need in order to lose weight. I mean, I'll share with you, I lost 60 pounds.
Shut up.
On Manjaro. I recommend Manjaro or Zepbound.
Okay.
So I struggled with my weight for over 40 years. And, every Monday I'd be like, okay, this is the day I'm going to eat healthy, And then I was introduced to this medication and I was like, this is amazing. Like, I'm not always thinking about food. I can make healthy choices. I can stop eating when I'm full.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other best thing for me is I'm alcohol free. So I actually it's actually being studied as a way to, it's not being studied, it's a known fact that it can actually help people with substance use disorders. Because because of what happens with your stomach, you just don't even want to drink, or one glass of wine. So I always warn my patients that one glass will feel like a bottle and your husband might be holding your head while you're throwing up. So I've been off of these medications now. I've been off of Manjaro probably for like 4 months now.
Oh my gosh.
And my weight's been, I've had no problem.
Really?
Yeah. And then the best thing is that I have no desire to drink alcohol. Zero. And I don't even want to. So I'm like the designated driver all the time. Not that I go anywhere, but yeah. So for me, I was like, well, this is a cool perk. So
That's amazing.
Yeah.
And now, how are you keeping yourself accountable though to because what I hear, because I'm friends with my girlfriends, sometimes the food noise comes back with a vengeance.
No, not for me.
Not for you?
Not at all. I mean,
That's
around
amazing.
my periods, I'm like, oh, I really want a quesadilla.
Amen, sister.
Yeah.
She was me last night.
Totally, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And then I just remind myself, oh, my period's coming. I'm going to be okay.
Yep.
But yeah, no, totally stable. And I know it's different, but you just have to, I think it helps you gain back control.
Yep.
And then when you stop it, if you're one of those people that the food noise comes back, I would stay on it.
Okay.
So I think that's one of the things. Aren't you worried that you're going to be on it for the rest of your life? And I'm like, I've been struggling with my weight the rest of my life. If I have to take something to keep my weight in check for the rest of my life, sign me up.
I love that.
So I don't think there's any shame in taking it for the rest of your life.
Oh, I love that. Okay. Surrogacy.
Mm-hmm.
What is the best way to find an agency? I may have to do surrogacy. Any best recommendations from Dr. Aimee?
Yeah, so when it comes to surrogacy, the most important thing is to maybe talk to friends, talk to your doctor about the agencies they recommend, because they're going to hopefully recommend agencies that have a very good reputation. There's unfortunately a lot of fraud when it comes to surrogacy, so you have to watch out for that. And one of the ways that you can protect yourself is not pay any fees up front for anything until your doctor has cleared and you have met and they have met your surrogate. Otherwise, you might be paying up front for something that doesn't even exist.
Oh, that's awful.
Yeah.
Okay, so do not pay for anything up front.
Yeah, so that's how I do the surrogacy. So my patient will talk to the surrogate, I'll talk to the surrogate, I'll review her medical records, and then once I've reviewed everything, then I'll say, okay, now we can match. Okay. But unfortunately, that's not the usual protocol that other doctors go through. They say, find me a surrogate, let me know when you have one, and they haven't reviewed anything and the patient is paid up front, and then the doctor then reviews the medical records and see that she's not a suitable candidate.
Oh, okay. And then if someone wants to reach out to you, could you direct them in finding? Okay.
Yeah.
What test should I do right now if I want to be informed about my fertility? I'm about 3 to 5 years out of wanting to have kids.
Yeah, so I think just checking an AMH level and then getting a pelvic ultrasound are the two things that are really easy to do. So have a fertility doctor look at your egg count, look for signs of endometriosis, PCOS, adenomyosis, fibroids, polyps, and then an AMH blood level, and then your doctor can take that information with your age and kind of tell you more about what the future would look like for you.
How drastically does egg count go down after the age of 35?
35 is the age where perimenopause starts. And I think that people don't realize that. So when a 40-year-old comes to me and says, what happened to me? I'm in menopause now. Or they give themselves a different diagnosis, like decreased ovarian reserve. And I say, no, it's actually normal and healthy to be in menopause still at 40. That's not considered it's not considered abnormal. Mm-hmm. But the issue is, like puberty, no one talks about it. Mm-hmm. No one talks about how your body starts changing even at the age of 35, where you might start seeing signs of perimenopause. And for some women, they hit menopause at 40 because of their mom, let's say, hits menopause early. So there's the family history. So there's some genetic component. And there could also be other things like endometriosis that could be causing it too.
Okay. I'm so fucked. Okay. I'm so fucked. Okay, our last question. Is it best to wait for fertility testing until you're ready to start having kids? I am 33, female, single.
No, the best thing to do is get checked now. Absolutely. There's no reason to wait, because there's that saying, knowledge is power. Mm-hmm. The more you know, the better things will go. So you don't want to wait up until then and then find out that you could have done something in your early 30s. Let's say you're going to get pregnant, you're planning on your first pregnancy at 36. Had you known something sooner, you might have taken different steps.
I love that. Is there anything I didn't ask you that I should? Is there anything that you want to say?
Anal sex will not help you get pregnant.
Am I allowed to keep that in?
Yeah, totally. It is. My favorite question is like, the husband say, "Does she have to have an orgasm to get pregnant?" I'm like, "Yes, every single time."
Let me see. Yeah. My husband comes up. Guess what Dr. Aimee told me? Yeah. This is how it's going to work.
Foreplay starts in the morning. So the minute your wife wakes up. And then, our version of foreplay is really simple. Take out the trash. Pick up your socks. Right?
Cook a dinner.
Cook a dinner. Exactly. No, I think your questions have been great.
You're an angel. Like, truly, you're an angel.